Published the Public Debt Management Authority Bill 2020 that seeks to manage the country's debt. During the launch of the BBI report at the Bomas of Kenya, the ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi noted that Kenya's debt management should have been included in the BBI report. Now, our reporter Tobias Chanji spoke with the sponsor of the bill, who is Nambale MP Sakwa Bunyasi, about the contents and the way forward.
Public debt has been increasing on an alarming rate, and that's why a bill sponsored by Nambale MP, that is Sakwa Bunyasi, that's the Public Debt Management Authority Bill 2020, has already been published by the Parliament. And this comes at a time when we also had the leader of ANC, that is Musalia Mudavadi, saying that the BBI report had not captured the debt of Kenya's government, especially now that we need to have that curbing. But now just allow me to speak to the MP, the man behind that bill, maybe to just delve us much more on the bill itself, the contents, and what's the way forward.
Thank you very much indeed. My name is Sakwa Bunyasi, Member of Parliament for Nambale. And in Parliament, I'm a member of the Budget and Appropriation Committee. But I'm very interested on issues of debt, and my party leader too, ANC, has a strong position that issues of debt ought to be managed, ought to be rationalized, ought to be planned for. We ought to be able to estimate how much we can borrow in a way that leaves us, in terms of payment, leaves us enough money to do the other things we should do. Debt cannot be determined simply by the willingness of lenders to give you money. Because now we can see that, for example, the way people are using Fuliza, it's there for you anytime you want it. But when it comes to payment, you may not have the cash flow, the free cash to pay for it. It's also true at the country level that you want to borrow. All countries borrow to some extent, but you have to manage how much you borrow. What we are seeking to do is to have an economy which, other than these problems we have got of COVID, an economy which is growing, but which is able to manage their debts so that they are not they don't end up with international CRBs. Their rating agencies are rating the performance of countries in respect of their debts and so on. And Kenya is on the safe side, but it has declined. It fell off from a higher category to a lower category. Some countries get to a point where you are unable to transact operations normally. Your banks can't issue letters of credit. Nobody can guarantee anything to the country. It's cash and carry. Countries get to that kind of point. In East Africa, we had such a case in the late 70s, early 80s. The country has now come out of that situation. In Europe, Greece got into that kind of problem. We are trying to get Kenya to borrow in a sustainable way. For example, as we speak now, the amount of money that goes towards paying debt as a percentage of the revenue that we collect, the taxes that are charged and are collected, is nearly 62%, which means nearly 2/3 of all of the money, that's our own money from taxes, is going towards paying debt. Now you can't now say those who are collecting the money are doing a bad thing for Kenya. No, we weren't borrowing. We have to realize that as we borrow and pay, we deny monies on other things, like, for example, money towards health, money towards support to the weak and vulnerable, money towards transportation, money towards water supply. All those things come from the same pocket. Okay. Yeah. And
so in other words, you said Kenya has become a Fuliza country. Maybe what should be our capping?
Now, I'm using Fuliza as an example, although people are saying that, a lot of that. And even in other economies, the amount of debt, household debt, ile wananchi wenyewe, is also important. If they don't have any room, then they can't do the things they should do at the household level. That's why the Fuliza thing is now coming in. It's going to be a serious problem. But the bill is targeting that debt, which is a sovereign debt. Ile deni la serikali yenyewe, how much it's borrowing, both domestically and externally. For the domestic debt, when the government borrows a lot, then the private sector there's not enough money in the system to allow the business sector to be able to borrow and grow. When they borrow externally, to large extent, and they don't have the funds to pay, and those funds come from the exports that we export, how much we earn in foreign exchange, because all those debts are in foreign exchange, And if we don't have enough to pay, then we have to go and borrow yet again to be able to repay it. What the bill is saying simply is that we need to create, now we have an office with a few officers inside the Treasury. But we need to get a body that's not under the direct control of the CS Treasury, because if it's under direct control, all you do is you increase your expenditure and you say, let us borrow now. You increase your expenditure, and these are your line officers, they will come running, they can't say no. We need a separate agency that would say, given what you're proposed to do, you, Mr. Minister, because the Minister is still responsible for planning of the economy and so on, including even that borrowing and so on, if we have to have sustainable debt, which does not exceed such amounts for payment, and those can be specified, then the maximum that it looks like we should borrow in this period is X. Until the economy grows bigger, then you might be able to borrow some more. And tell the minister that, sorry, Mr. Minister, you cannot sustain the expenditure that you have got. That the minister will be armed with that when he goes to discuss with the cabinet, when he has a sitting with the president. Somebody must tell the truth so that we do not fudge information. Already, if you are to get how much you actually owe, it's a difficult figure to get because there's no centralized place which keeps that data. And when we find that we as a country is being downgraded in the ratings, and when that was being done, COVID had not come. Now COVID has come, the economy was virtually shut down, and it has contracted, has grown smaller, although it's smaller than other countries have suffered, but we are not headed in the right direction. Then we have also got other pressures around us and within us. We have the BBI to implement. That's going to require even more money on key actions like a referendum if that comes. And that means, therefore, that we might have to go out there and borrow yet more. So all we are doing is we are saying set up a separate agency that analyzes our debt, records our debt, gives guidelines on domestic borrowing and on external borrowing, that makes sure that the debts that are being brought in are debts that are long-term, which are not expensive, short-term debts.
Okay. Now, Mheshimiwa, my other question will be, what next now after this bill has been published?
The bill has now been published. It's with the government printers, and it should be out in the public domain. The public will have at least 2 weeks to make comments on it and make submissions, written or oral, preferably written. The committee will sit and will receive those submissions, and they will then summarize what amendments or changes or views that the public has got, public including any other specialized agencies out there. Then the draft bill will be amended, and I'll be able to get you a soft copy of this bill if you need. It will be amended, and that amended version will come before the National Assembly, before Parliament, for debate. Parliament will debate, and if approved, it will become law. It will set up this institution, and we shall begin to handle issues of debt professionally in a way that advises government from a totally professional point of view.
Okay. Then my last question is, did you make maybe any submissions to the BBI team as they were moving around collecting the report?
The submissions we made to the BBI team at KICC was that the issue of debt, and Honorable Musalia Mudavadi was the team leader, of course being the party leader, and I went in there as an ANC person, was that we have to look at the amount of debt we are incurring, that it's reaching levels that are of great concern to our development partners, and we can see it internally that funding of services is always a challenge because we have not been able to contain the debt we have got to within the means that we can afford to pay back. That submission we made. We did not submit a bill to them, but in the process of the bills to look at, I know that they have mentioned public debt, but only in passing. But now we have a chance. We have a very modern, substantive bill that takes from the best. We have looked at countries like Ireland, Sweden, Nigeria in Africa, Sierra Leone, and many other countries to see how they manage, South Africa, how they manage their debt. And what we have got would be, I think, a good best practice kind of bill that Kenya, as a robust economy in this region, would be ahead of others, because we're going to have to continue to borrow, and we need that environment to be professionalized.
All right, thank you so much, Tobias Chanji, for that. Let's move on. The government has announced a program to train and equip border riders with a vast range of skills in a bid to enhance compliance to traffic laws.